and doing this webinar.
Okay, very good. Good evening and namaste to everyone who is here with us. We are going to be discussing some very weighty, some very important aspects of what it means to be a chemical engineer, what it means to be an engineer, what it means to be a scientist, or indeed a manager of science, and how do we look at the future in all of this. So basically, all of us are young people here. So I would like to focus on what is happening in this world. What is the new roles of engineer? What are the challenges of the future, and what are the opportunities? And how do we indeed prepare for all of them? So we are going to have a roller coaster ride. This roller coaster ride is in 4 parts. So the 4 parts, I see, keep admitting people. I see on the screen sometime that somebody is waiting to get in. All are welcome. I'm so delighted that all of us are here today talking together. There'll also be time later for questions and for discussion that we can do together. The 4 parts I want to talk about. The first one, anyway, all the 4 parts are related to each other. The first one is related to nanotech, its applications, its opportunities, and then going into what are the future technology challenges. And these are not challenges just for mechanical engineer, electrical, chemical, civil, what we call them. These are actually challenges which are interdisciplinary, as I would come to in a moment. So all of us have to be totally prepared for them, because see, the future is coming at us at ever faster and faster rate. Things are getting exponential. Now, of course, the processes of learning of human mind, they are not exponential. They are linear with a small slope. So to be prepared for those challenges, to understand them and the opportunity they bring and the learning processes that need to adapt to those changes is basically that what we would be discussing. Now, preparing the ground for these opportunities or the new mind, what does it actually demand from all of us? And then a little bit, some stuff about career choices. How do we get in there? What are the things that we consider while preparing for our careers? Now, remember that career is not a job. Okay, we may get a first job, we may get a second, third, fourth, fifth jobs, but those are random set of events. A career is something which has continuity, which has vision, and which has purpose. So it's very important to understand the difference between a job and a career, and what are the new future opportunities and how we prepare for them. So even at the risk of repeating all of this, because the rest of it, as you can see, that this is a very busy menu. But this is something that I want to share with all the young people. I'm also young. See, I've never seen an old person in my whole life. Basically, there are young people and younger people, and all of us are going to share a future. And we want this future to be positive. We want to be totally prepared for it. And we want to understand actually the winds of changes which are happening. Okay, so that's what it is. Let's get on to the first topic, which is related to what the hell is nanotech. Now, I've been working in this area for nearly 35 years, but nanotech then was not known by that word. Really, I mean, last 20 years that I've been working in nanotech proper. And you see the rise of all this stuff. So first of all, let's have a very quick introduction about what actually nano actually means, and why is it so important for us or for technologies that are evolving and of the future. So as we all know that a micrometer is 1,000,000 times smaller than a meter. A nanometer is 1,000,000,000 times smaller than a meter, which is 10 to the power minus 9 meters. And to just look at our everyday experience, is 1,000 to 10,000 times smaller than diameter of a human hair. Depends on which human you are looking at and how thick these hair are. But anyhow, it's very small. And coming from the other side is 8 to 10 atoms would span about 1 nanometer. And if it's a big molecule, that can be several nanometers itself. So clearly, on one side of it, you are getting down into molecular level. Basically, anything which is less than 100 nanometers as an arbitrary yardstick is considered the domain of nanoscience and nanotechnology. A very rough guide is less than 100 nanometers, but a more precise guide is basically that anything is nanotechnology when the properties depend on size. What do we mean by that? You see that most of the things we associate properties with material. For example, gold has a certain color, it has certain conductivity. Now, that's independent of the size of the gold, whether it's 1 meter, 10 kilometer, or 1 centimeter, more likely, right? But once you get below 100 nanometer gold particle, none of these properties are fixed. Other words, the properties change as a function of size. So if I have a 10 nanometer gold cluster versus 1 nanometer gold cluster, they would have different color, they will have different conductivity, they will have all the chemical, physical, mechanical properties, electronic properties, catalytic properties. All of them would depend very critically on size. So other words, nanotechnology is a domain where properties, mechanical, chemical, catalytic, electronic, all of them depend on size in addition to the material. So they are no longer only material properties, but so it brings a great deal of flexibility, because when I want to make something, a device, some functional material, then by tuning the size of that material, I can get the desired properties that are needed for that application. So one of the reasons that nanomaterials have a different property is because as the size becomes very small, all the atoms and molecules are located at the surface, at the interface, rather than in the bulk or in the interior. So what that means is their interactions, the molecular interactions in the interior are different from that in the surface. And because these molecular interactions determine the properties will start changing because a huge number of these atoms and molecules are actually surface molecules rather than bulk molecules. So its high surface to bulk ratio is one of the things that brings in new properties in nanomaterials. At the same time, the packing of these atoms and molecules on the surface is very different. Surface is a two-dimensional world, and the bulk materials that we deal with is a three-dimensional world. And so therefore their packing, their bonding, the state of their bonding, all of those are different. And therefore the properties, which is a mixture of surface and bulk properties, depends on size. Okay. So if we were to define nanotechnology, is the creation of useful and functional materials, devices, and systems by control of matter on nanometer length, and exploitation of novel properties, physical, chemical, biological, which arise due to that length scale. Now, the impact of nanotechnology is not limited to one sector. It's not limited to one branch of knowledge. It doesn't matter what kind of engineer you are. It doesn't matter what kind of scientist you are. It is actually all pervading. So therefore, nanotechnology is a great example of an interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary branch of knowledge. And you see, this becomes very, very important for all the new technologies, and I would come to that in a moment. So the impact of nanotechnology, it's like I said, is all pervasive. It is from everything, computing, communication, 5G and beyond, data, materials and manufacturing, health and medicine, energy, environment, transportation, defense, security, anything at all. Okay, so it's not limited to just one kind of product, not limited to one kind of technology, not limited to one branch of knowledge or market. Okay, now there are, roughly speaking, 4 different aspects of nanotechnology and nanoscience. In fact, if you were to focus on M's here, M basically, oh, what happened there? My slide stopped moving. Oh. Okay, there. So pay attention to the M's that I have underlined. All of science and technology can be broken down into 4 M's. And again, it doesn't matter if you call yourself this kind of engineer, that scientist, all these labels actually have no meaning. But all of science and technology can be broken down into mechanics, materials, manufacturing, and machines. So basically, mechanics is understanding of why things happen, how they happen, and so on. Materials, of course, you need all kind of materials to make things. Machines and devices are basically a bundle. Well, that design is done by mechanics, and then you need materials and you need manufacturing or fabrication techniques in order to make machines and devices. So basically, it doesn't matter, like I said, if you're a mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, electronics, computer, what have you. Basically, you would be working either in 1 or 2 or 3 and all of them, right? Actually, these labels that we put in, like chemical engineer, what have you, they are largely meaningless in this context. Okay, so now what's happening? Other thing which is happening, of course, in nanotechnology is that the size matters, but also material matters. So a whole lot of electronic applications, for example, are being replaced by polymers, semiconducting polymers, conducting polymers, even carbon, because carbon is a very versatile material. And so you can tune its properties both by size. There are carbon quantum dots, for example, and also organic materials. So, and of course, we know that the devices are getting smaller. The smallest transistor that you can make today is about 5 nanometers. Just for comparison, you would have, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going, okay. Right. So you see that this particular slide, which I'm showing you, is about more than 15 years old. But the size of virus, of course, has not changed in all this. In fact, the virus we are dealing with now is also about 100 nanometer, which is very interesting because you see, so viruses basically are nanoparticles. And like I said, the transistor gone down to about 5 to 7 nanometer level. So you can imagine, consistently manufacturing those devices with quality and without rejection is a huge, huge challenge. And let us see how these challenges are being addressed and so on. Also, a very interesting thing is, look, one of the reasons that nanotechnology is so important for healthcare, for example, you imagine that if you were to target a virus, you cannot target it using a microparticle or a meter long particle, right? What you need to do is have about the same size to deal with cells, to deal with bacteria and viruses as, for example, small particles, less than 100 nanometer, 10 nanometer, few nanometers. So they can go inside the cell, they can target different components of a cell, they can, basically be targeted and have comparable size as the size of the entity that you want to address. Okay, of course, is very interesting. The first slogan about nanotechnology was given long, long time ago by Feynman. He said there's plenty of room at the bottom. And there is, you all know the book, which is called Small is Beautiful. And what is the big dream of nanotechnology? To move and build things atom by atom, the way nature does it. Nature is very clever. Okay, nature has been a master of nanotechnology for a very, very long time. Actually, nature is a master of technology at all scales. The scales going down from molecular all the way to terrestrial. So that's very important, and I will also come to that point in a short while. But we should recognize at this point that nanotechnologies, all of it is not high tech only. In fact, it impacts everyday products and technologies in a profound and disruptive way. In fact, today, nanotechnology is almost everywhere, even if we may not recognize it as such. For example, these examples are actually in the beginning of nanotechnology revolution. It's come a long way. A high performance ski wax, which is intelligent wax, breathable, waterproof ski jackets and textiles, wrinkle resistant, stain repellent textiles. For example, skin creams, the skin creams and the creams, for example, we use for sunblock. They have nanoparticles in it. In fact, the cosmetic companies, giants like L'Oreal, etc., they hold very large number of patents in nanotechnology. One of the reasons for it, if you, for example, if you want to deliver a vitamin through skin, if you had a microparticle, it cannot penetrate the skin. But if you have a small particle, right, nanoparticle, that can actually get into small spaces, can go across skin, it can go across many other barriers which are biological. So at the same time, making a small particle size also changes the color of the solution. For example, the cream may become transparent rather than have this milky appearance. Um, of course, the DVD or the electronics, that's of course made possible only by nanotechnology. Sunglasses, anti-reflective coatings, scratch-resistant coatings, what have you. Sunscreen, I talked about. Tennis rackets and balls. You see, the old balls, they used to lose air much faster. But if you have a coating of nano clay particles inside the ball, then it provides a impermeable barrier to the passage of air through the ball. And because of that, it would retain its shape much longer. Anyhow, you can do literature surveys, so you can find out there are millions of products that are products of nanotechnology. Like I said, it's all pervasive because it adds value in the old products. So it's not only the new products, but even the old products are redesigned, repurposed in order to bring greater value, greater functionality in these products. Okay, so let us shift gear and see what are the different ways you can do nanofabrication. In other words, when you want to make something small, what are the ways of making something small? Um, what I'm going to do to save the bandwidth, I would quit my camera, which I think is okay because our focus is on the slides, and I'll come back later on that. Um, okay, so now how do you make something small? There are three different ways of doing it. These are called um, the top-down techniques. The first suite of techniques is called top-down. Basically, top-down techniques are all those techniques that require a machine tool. It may be radiation, it may be electron beam, it may be an ion beam, and a whole lot of these are called lithographies. So basically, you make use of photons, you make use of X-rays, you deposit some stuff, you can remove some stuff, making use of these tools. So all of these techniques, which are also called lithographies, of different kinds, using either radiation of a small wavelength like X-rays, and ion beams and electron beams, and even photons. All of that is called the top-down techniques. And this is, in fact, the central suite of techniques for making all electronic items. Another way, which is actually favored in nature, is called a bottom-up. Bottom-up techniques basically mean that you have, it's also called self-assembly. Self-assembly means that you have a lot of small particles or large molecules. They come together under right set of conditions to make something bigger of a particular structure. So idea is, you see in nature how things are happening. They are not happening because some machine tool. Is basically self-assembly, but this is a very special kind of self-assembly which is guided by information content in these objects. Our body, for example, DNA carries all the information, right? So it's not random, but there are some set of instructions which are embedded in these materials in order for them to make things. So this is bottom-up set of techniques, and in physics and chemistry, is basically called self-assembly. A self-assembly again is bunch of small particles, nanoparticles, or big molecules that are coming together because of molecular or interparticle interactions, like the van der Waals forces, like the electrostatic forces, and so on, hydrophobic, the entropic forces, all of that. It basically brings them together in different organizations. And this is what you call self-assembly. The third technique is what may be called self-organization. Now, self-organization basically is you start with a simple shape, like for example, a very thin nanometer thick film, which is coated on a surface. Now, under the right set of conditions, typically all things nano are unstable. You see, they are unstable because they have very high surface to volume ratio, which means there's a lot of surface energy. So it can decrease the energy by changing the surface. It can, reorganize itself in order to reduce energy. We know that everything happens because energy gets reduced. So when I change shape spontaneously, its energy of the system gets reduced. So it's basically it changes shape. From a simple shape, which is easy to make, like a film, a coating, and then it becomes more complicated. It takes up a shape which is more useful, which is more interesting, which is more complex. So these are basically three techniques, broadly speaking. Of course, these are not techniques. These are the classification of techniques. These are the suite of techniques. And under each of this heading and under each of these boxes, there are tens to hundreds of different techniques, specific techniques, which are used for nano fabrication and nano manufacturing. Ow, my slide stuck again. Okay, there. Here is an example of self-organization, which is from my group, based on research that we've been doing for about 20 years. So you see, basically here we started with a flat film, okay, a polymer film, which is just spin coated on a surface. Then you create the right set of conditions for this film to become far more complex and evolve into a periodic pattern. So you see, no machine tool has been used to make these structures on micro scale and nano scale. So one can make these structures by having a deep understanding of self-organizational processes. Okay, so each of the stuff I'm talking about here is actually worth about 20 lectures minimum. Okay, 20 hours of instructions. So we'll not have time for that. What I want to do here is to introduce some key words and key ideas in how we think about nanotechnology. Now, one of the things, I showed you these structures which are periodic, which are hierarchical, which have micro structures and nano structures on them. And a whole lot of these structures are found in nature. This is a very interesting thing. All of us as engineers should be aware of the fact that nature is a very good instructor. Now, especially gets very important for the future. So this is called nature-inspired science and technology, which means, just not be sitting in labs and in front of computers, but if we had the curiosity to understand how things happen in nature, because nature has had millions of years to evolve the techniques that we are just beginning to appreciate and understand now. Let's look at some simple examples. these simple examples you see here are these very vibrant colors that are found in nature, for example, peacock feathers and butterfly wings. And these kind of vibrant colors, none of the man-made colors are actually of this kind. Very interesting. Now, the second, you look at the lotus effect. A lotus effect means that whole lot of leaves and feathers in nature are water repellent. Right, the water rolls out from them like a drop of mercury. Now look at the ceramics which are found in nature. These ceramics, they are not made at high temperature and extreme conditions like the man-made ceramics, and they are so beautiful. They are so tough. Look at this seashell right there. This is made at room temperature, right? So beautiful. Now look at these geckos and these frogs and insects, which are walking around all their life. They're sticking to the surface. They can modulate the strength of their adhesion and keep using it. But we don't have any tapes. If you hang your poster with a tape and then remove the tape, you cannot use that tape again. It's not reusable adhesion. So you see, if we were to understand the science behind these processes in nature, then we can translate them into technology and products. And indeed, a whole lot of that is already happening. In fact, the 4 examples I've chosen here, the bioadhesion, the lotus effect, and the structural colors, they have something in common. All of them are because of the micro and nano structure on the surface that these functions are obtained. In other words, these are not material properties. These are properties of the nanostructure which is formed on the surface. And so it's because of that that we obtain these functionalities. So this is lotus effect. Is compared also, is sometimes called fakir drops. So fakir drops, analogy with fakir is fakir sitting on the bed of nails. You see in these 2 pictures here. So essentially, the drop of water is not sitting on a flat surface. It is sitting on a micro nano textured surface. And so it does not come in contact with the surface. It is in fact riding on a blanket of air. And that is what makes the surface super hydrophobic, right? You see here. So that's what makes the water, the surface to be water repellent. In fact, you can make any metal surface water repellent. You can make plastic surface water repellent. So it's not a function of material. It's not a property of that material. It's a property of the texture on the surface of that material, right? So it's just very quick examples there which are easy to understand. Nanotechnology applications are very widespread, as I pointed out, and I would not belabor this point. You can just see this slide. You can do a Google Guru search to find out all the different ways in which nanotechnology is being used. One very interesting application, of course, is in medical products and areas, in particular about targeted and sustained drug delivery. Now we know, for example, in cancer treatment, we give drug, like chemotherapy, but this is not targeted. So, in other words, oftentimes it half kills the patient before it kills the cancer. Right, so it has very, very severe side effects. But if we can actually target the tumor, if we can precisely deliver the drug where it is needed, then all these side effects can be removed. Another very important area, which is so important for future, is dealing with the rise of antimicrobial resistance. It's already, if you were to do Google search, we'll find out how serious a problem that is. A whole lot of bacteria have become resistant to antibiotics that we use or abuse. And because of that, we would have to look for something, because the bacteria are very smart. They adopt, they evolve, they mutate in order to deal with the antibiotics. So one has to find a new kind of strategy which does not bring resistance with it. So a whole lot of nanoparticles, for example, spikes that can puncture the cell membrane. It can be an effective solution, and there's a whole lot of research which is going on there. Of course, one very big challenge of the future is about generating clean energy and its storage and its use. And there, for example, whether it is photovoltaics, new generation of photovoltaic materials and architectures are coming in a big way. And of course, if you go down the future, the real clean energy source will be hydrogen. Okay, so hydrogen is, green hydrogen in particular. What does green hydrogen mean? Green hydrogen means that you are producing hydrogen by splitting water, making use of renewable energy like wind, solar energy, and so on. And then, of course, that you have to store this hydrogen in a stable way, should be able to transport this hydrogen in a stable way. You should be able to use this hydrogen on site, where on demand, wherever it is to be used. So this is going to be a huge opportunity for all of us chemical engineers. We have to watch out for that. Of course, in chemicals and nano structured materials, composite materials, composite polymers, electronic applications, membranes, um, a whole lot of those, textiles even. There's a whole lot of work on what is called smart textiles or technical textiles. What that means is that their function is not only to provide a barrier to cover our skin, but they also bring in, for example, they may have woven sensors, very tiny sensors in them. So, your entire medical history is being relayed all the time, and so on. And of course, for defense applications. And of course, in electronics and in computing and in communication. That's obvious. Okay, so now what we want to do, this is all very good. Actually, you can learn about any of this very easily by doing your search on Google and elsewhere. What I want to talk about now is that what kind of mind we need to cultivate to deal with these challenges, not only of nanotechnology, but the rise of all these exponential technologies, to deal with the future, which is rushing at us at ever faster speed. So some of these things about lateral thinking, about creativity and common sense, very important. We laugh at common sense because we have been trained too well for many years in schools and colleges. Fact is that the common sense is very uncommon today, and in fact, it's not by by tons of technical literature that one solves problems. One solves problems often by lateral thinking, by creative thinking, and by creative common sense. So, what is creativity? Creativity is about connecting the dots of knowledge which have not been connected before. In other words, making, learning everything and synthesizing it. And basically, our science and technology is moving from tool centric to problem centric. Other words, we have a problem to solve. This problem cannot be solved by a single tool, by a single discipline. So therefore, the synthesis, interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary, out of disciplinary becomes very important. It assumes paramount importance. So while we have all been trained to think like, oh, chemical engineer, this engineer, physical chemist, green chemist, organic chemist, inorganic chemist, whatever, right? All those labels actually become largely meaningless going in the future. So it is so important that we not only know the tools or the techniques, a suite of techniques which may come from different domains of knowledge, because all of them would be required to solve a problem. I'll give you some quick examples of, in fact, lateral thinking, connecting the dots which have not been connected before. In fact, it's also related to nanotechnology that we are discussing. Now, when we do nanotechnology, when you make something small, you cannot make any progress if you cannot see it. So you have to see what you make in nanotechnology. It's small things. Now, how do you see things? Well, you see things, traditionally, you see things by radiation. You see them by light. And if you want to see small things, Then you make use of a beam of electrons, which is called then electron microscopy. Right? Why do you make use of beam of electrons to see small things? Because the wavelength of electrons is much smaller than the wavelength of light. And you know that the resolution of seeing is lambda by 2, where lambda is the wavelength. So by using smaller wavelength, you can see smaller things. So that's one way of seeing, isn't it? One way of seeing is by radiation, by different radiation, different wavelengths, and so on. But you think about, is there some other way of seeing things? I mean, radiation is not, light is not the only way of seeing things. Think about, how does a blind person see the world? Well, he or she sees it by taking a stick and poking it on the surface and walking. So when you poke a stick on the surface and walk, scan the surface, then you can make a visual map of what your stick feels, what your nerves feel. You can make a record of that in your brain, right? That is how you make a visual map without actually seeing by light. Now, if you want to see something small, what you can do is make that stick very small and then keep about poking on the surface that you want to see, right? And this is exactly what is called atomic force microscopy. So before the discovery, before the invention of atomic force microscope, nanotechnology could not have made much progress, right? So here's the story of atomic force microscopy, which also got a very close cousin, which is called scanning tunneling microscope, a microscopy. They got the Nobel Prize for this, and that is how it works. So basically, you take a micro cantilever, which is your tapping stick. Then you go about dragging it on a surface that you want to visualize, and then keep the same force for tapping. And then you go up and down the surface, and then you can make a visual map. With this technique, on a good day for scanning tunneling microscopy, you can actually see atoms. So there was this, people used to talk about, in my good old days, people said there were atoms, people said there were molecules, but you couldn't see them. But now you can. And now these techniques have been refined so much that you can actually image moving electrons. So in a device, for example, in a very small device, 5 nanometer, maybe you have 10 electrons moving. And in fact, you can figure out what their motion looks like. So both in terms of time and spatial resolution, this has become fantastic. Picosecond resolutions, and you would have sub-nanometer resolutions in space. Fantastic. Now let's look at another example. Now, a whole lot of time when we are working, when we are learning, we are doing experiments. Experiments are there to learn. They are not there just to confirm something which is already known. Of course, our lab experiments, undergraduate level in the college, are like that we are only confirming what is known. But when you do a real experiment, you have to be looking out for all possibilities. And this is an example, very good example from nanotechnology, which says, look, it is very important that we focus on the entire experiment, not only one aspect of it, not only to confirm our pet theory, right, but to discover new things in there. And so what happens? This is the story of graphene. Now, graphene is a two-dimensional layer of carbon atoms, right? So all the carbon atoms are packed in a single atomic layer, and that is called graphene, the wonder magical material for nanotechnology. All sorts of things are happening with graphene. Well, how was graphene discovered? Very interesting story. And very quickly, and there's another Nobel Prize in physics not so long ago in 2010. Okay, so you see, if you take a block of graphite, and you want to do some experiments on the block of graphite, you want a clean surface, you want to remove dirt from the surface. So you take a sticky tape, you put it on the surface and peel that sticky tape in order to remove all the stuff from the surface and to expose a new layer of carbon atoms there. Yeah, because you see, those of you know graphite, graphite, it has all the atoms in graphite have very small cohesive forces. So when you peel the tape, basically some atoms come off from the surface. and then you leave behind a freshly cleaved surface that you can probe. So, a whole lot of labs that are interested in graphite have been doing this for a long time. So what they do is they peel the tape and throw away the tape and keep the graphitic block. Now, these people, they threw away the graphitic block and they kept the tape. So if you were to examine the tape, you would see that often there would be this graphene, which is sticking onto the tape. And then you can, isolate it. And then you can measure its properties. You can do experiments on it, right? So this is what it is. Okay, let's go to another example of thinking outrageously, thinking laterally. So I told you that there are three different ways that you can make a nano thing. So there are three different ways you can do nano fabrication: top down, bottom up, and self-organization. Now think about it. Can there be another way of making small things? So I saw this movie in the 1980s. It's called Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Now you think about this and say, look, can I make something big like a millimeter or 10 microns? And then shrink it to make a tens of nanometer size. Now, especially if this stuff is a complex shape, if it's three-dimensional, it would be very difficult to make it by traditional methods of machining, top-down, bottom-up, self-organization, if we are looking at an arbitrary three-dimensional complex shape. But you think about it, hey, can I make something, the same thing, but a little bit bigger, and then shrink it to make it small? Now that looks like an outrageous idea, but it really is not, because you can translate that into reality. And you can do that. Here is an example that we did, in fact, in my research lab. So you make that three-dimensional object, then make a replica of that object by micro molding. Molding, we all understand molding. You take a gel, you take something, a putty, and then you make a replica, which is a negative replica of the original object. Then if you make that replica in a gel, which can be dried, and when you dry it, it shrinks, right? So it shrinks some way. After that, you do another molding and another shrinking, another molding, another shrinking. You do it 10 times. You can reduce the size of that object a great deal. And this is something that you can do actually in a high school lab, right? So this is just an example. I'm not saying that this is technologically, a very useful example, but this is an example of doing out of box thinking. Let our thinking not be limited by our textbook. Let it not be limited only by what we read and what we see, but out of box thinking. Okay, let me shift gears again and come to another theme, which is, like I said, is related to what we have been talking about. And this is about the future. We must remember about the future is that predictions are very hard, especially about the future. Everybody is very wise about the past, but about the future is very uncertain. Okay, now, so preparing the ground for the future, as far as nanotech is concerned, is growing very fast. The market is about $5 billion in 2021, is expected to rise to about $23 billion in just another 5 years, with a growth rate of about 30%. Another thing is hugely interdisciplinary. So which means that we must have the capacity to learn from all disciplines. This is basically what I have done all my life, is that I have not defined myself only as one kind of engineer and I saying, look, I don't know about this, I cannot learn it, it's not of concern to me. Okay, that would not work, for almost anything that happens in the future. So it's interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary, out of disciplinary, and it has a huge impact and applications and everything. And very interesting thing here, we have, you may have all thought, you may have been taught that it is the science that drives technology. But now opposite is happening more and more. It is the technologies that is driving even new discoveries in science. And atomic force microscopy is a good example of that. So there are a whole lot of examples. We now have time to go into it. But essentially, even when you want to discover new science, you need technology tools that would allow it to happen. Okay. And what is most important looking at any of these future technologies is that it should not be incremental. We should look for disruptive changes, big ideas, and that it must have a relevance and direction. Okay, as far as the technology futures are concerned, if you are greatly interested in it, the technology vision 2035 would be a good place to start. You can search for it on the net. It is downloadable. It has done by the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, and is basically saying, look, how different sectors are going to respond to different technology challenges and opportunities. And as all of us budding scientists and engineers of the future, we must know not only what is in the textbooks, but be aware of the directions of where the society and technology is going. Okay, so here is basically my wish to look at this technology vision 2035. There was earlier technology vision 2020, which was chaired by Dr. Abdul Kalam, and that exercise is continuing now. And there are also sectoral reports, which means health, water, energy, transport, and so on, how each of these sectors are going to be impacted. Many interesting things are happening today. So we all know, I think all of you know about Industry 0 to Industry 4, 4.0, 4.0, in which we find ourselves today. All the earlier industries of history were basically dependent on the flow and control of muscle, the flow and control of energy and materials and machines. Today is another dimension which is injected into it, which means that the Industry 4.0 and indeed the society which is dependent on it is governed by the flow and the ownership and control and use of data, information, and knowledge. Of course, all of these three things are different, but they are dependent on each other. And so, what are the overarching challenges of the future in technology? First challenge is the rise of intelligent machines. Okay, which basically they certainly take care of all the manual jobs, but also the cognitive jobs and the creative jobs, and more of that is happening. What is a cyber physical and intelligent machine? It is a convergence of materials, machines, communication, perception through sensors, computing, autonomous decision making through artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, what have you, and autonomous control and action through actuators. So it's basically coming together of digital, cyber, and physical, which is why we call it cyber physical world. And the next revolution, going from Industry 4 to Industry 5, will also integrate the biological in its fold. So it will be cyber, physical, biological. Basically, some of the biological entities like cells and organs will get into cyber physical, and even more importantly, whole lot of cyber physical will get into biological, including our bodies. Okay, so very interesting challenges ahead for all of us, and basically the digital cyber future, which integrates the physical, has a very wide impact on everything that we do. And everybody, no matter what we call ourselves. So it's time that we get into this business. Even if you're a chemical engineer, huge opportunities are coming that way for doing work. So, the process of learning, skill and education, work, governance, experience, mental health, social interactions, judiciary, commerce, medicine, privacy, safety, media, and the whole system of justice. Right? All of that are going to be fundamentally impacted. Okay, so how is India dealing with it? There is a big mission that Department of Science and Technology launched a couple of years ago, worth rupees 4,000 crores on cyber physical systems that have established 25 hubs across the country. Another area which is actually an evolution of nanotechnology is the quantum systems and quantum technologies and products. A new mission by Department of Science and Technology worth rupees 8,000 crores is coming up in that area. So what is the quantum systems? Quantum, basically when things become very small, like I already pointed out, maybe 1 nanometer particle, there may be a single electron in there. It may be interacting with a single photon, and all of that comes in the realm of quantum. And quantum technologies, essentially, they are quantum computing, quantum communication, quantum devices, quantum algorithms, and quantum materials. For example, superconducting materials are quantum materials, right? So this is a huge challenge and opportunity for all of us. And of course, supercomputing and all of that gets in there. The second overarching challenge for engineers, and indeed for everybody, is sustainability and climate change, right? Now, you see, if you think about it, we talk about sustainable development. All engineers, doesn't matter who we are, we should be aware of sustainable development goals. And we should be aware of how science and technology is an integral part of it, which means that the world in which we are going to be living and shaping is very critically dependent on new technologies, finding new solution to both old problems and new problems. And so sustainable development and the climate change is one of those things that is something I would urge each one of us actually to go over the 17 sustainable development goals and the science and technology underpinnings of those goals. Before I leave this, I want to also tell you very quickly that all technologies, while we work in isolation, we work in silos, there is a very, very important aspect of every technology, which is called nexus. Nexus simply means that nothing is isolated in this world. When I talk about agriculture, I must talk about water, because 75% of water is used in agriculture. When I talk about agriculture, I must talk about health. And I talk about agriculture, I must talk about transport and processing, what have you. So everything is interdependent. And often when we find a solution in isolation, that solution may not be an optimal solution because it impacts other areas negatively. And so this is called nexus. And this is all described by what you may call lights and shadows of technology. There's another aspect that you see, not everything can be solved by technology alone. So, of course, the policies, and in fact, the will of the society and the awareness and the leadership and all of that is so important, because technology alone never solves any problem. It may, in fact, create new set of problems. And this is actually summarized here. This guy is saying, I used to think top problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought with 30 years of good science, we could address these problems, but I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with those, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. And we scientists don't know how to do that. In fact, what he says about scientists is true for everybody else. So with that little thought, I would go to a third challenge, which is ahead of all of us engineers and scientists, which is the innovation. It is the age of innovation. You see, everything that we learn in college is about invention. It is about mechanics. It is about how to create knowledge and transmit knowledge. But innovation is completely different. So innovation is opposite of invention. To illustrate that point, let me very quickly define invention and innovation. I find that even very seasoned, very less young scientists, even they don't understand the difference between invention and innovation. You may quiz your teachers, for example. I guarantee you that very large number of them would not be able to differentiate between the concept of invention and discovery on one hand and innovation on the other. So invention is a black box. in which the input is money and the output is knowledge. This is what we do in colleges, right? The invention, and of course, we transmit that knowledge. That is also part of invention ecosystem, right? We create new knowledge, which requires money to do that. Innovation is another black box, number two, in which the input is knowledge and the output is money. In other words, you create new socio-economic opportunities using the knowledge that you have. And so startups is a very good example of innovation ecosystem. Now, see, more and more, as our younger people, we must make sure that the knowledge that we have is a real knowledge, is a knowledge which can be operationalized, which means that we have really understood translating that knowledge into new opportunities. And so that is innovation. And of course, both in invention and innovation, there are three different ways you can solve a problem. That in Hindi, I call them Jugaad, Dhanda, and Panga. And the English meaning of that is also given there on the slide. So Jugaad is by hook or by crook, not an optimal solution. Die another day, but at least, make sure that your demand for today is met. But it's not a good solution. It's not a scalable solution, not optimal. It is not universally accepted solution. Dhanda is incremental business as usual. Whereas Panga, which is a disruptive way of solving the problem, is basically is what we have to spend at least 10-20% of our energy and time on that. Okay, we'll not have time actually to go into all of that. Oh, I see that we're running into 6 o'clock very quickly. Another very big challenge that we must all be aware of is the inclusion and diversity. You see, let me point out very, very quickly that, diversity, the diversity in terms of gender, it is in terms of the geographical location, it is in terms of socio-economic background, it is in terms of, the food we eat, the clothes we wear, the language we speak, all of that. We must have a very, very healthy understanding and respect for diversity. Because imagine the gender, inclusion and diversity. I've never seen a bicycle run on one wheel, except in a circus. So, it is obvious that unless we create new opportunities for all, that we cannot be strong and we cannot grow. In fact, diversity has a very special meaning in nature. You see, like I pointed out, nature is a great inspiration, not only for materials, not only for manufacturing, not only for mechanics, but even the principles, the philosophy, if you would. Now, you see why nature actually favors diversity. You see, often people think nature favors optimal designs. No, it favors diversity. To do the same function, it would have 10 different ways of doing it, right? And so why is that? That is because if we had no diversity, if we were all carbon copies of each other, no matter how optimal we were, no matter how good we looked, at a given time, the next virus that comes along, which kills one of us, will kill all of us together. In other words, in order to have robustness, in order to have flexibility to deal with different challenges, in order to have different perspectives, in order to have different solutions to problems, in fact, to have understanding of different problems, we need diversity and inclusion. So, next time you see somebody, don't just laugh at him or her. I mean, make sure that we are all on the same page, and that is the only way that we would indeed progress together. Okay, let me summarize the processes of the new mind. Okay, as an engineer, as a scientist, in fact, as any living human. So there's a shift from tool-centric, which means discipline-centric, to problem-centric approach, which means that we have to integrate our knowledge, synthesize, and not only analysis. Unfortunately, all our teaching and learning is based on going from chapter to chapter, is going from exam to exam, is going from one college to another, from one degree to another. At the end of it, we do not understand the interrelationship between everything that has been learned. And because there is no emphasis on synthesis, to crack exams, I only need to know the silos of knowledge, but not how they connect with each other. So please remember this while learning. Then, of course, that is what is important for connecting the dots. Maintain your intuition and common sense. In fact, you see, the first very scientific approach to life, that I have seen is by Buddha, 2,500 years ago. He said, uh, uh, you know, um, believe nobody, no matter who said it, no matter if I said it, unless it squares with your own logic and your own evidence and your own experience, right? This is so important. If you want to be a leader, it's not going to happen simply by reading some textbook, but by doing critical thinking, by gathering evidence, and all of that, and arriving at a synthesized, multi-perspective solution. So also we must remember that all the technologies which happen, which are successful, they happen by convergence and co-arising. Co-arising is a very important aspect. What it means is when I'm working in some area, I must know what is happening around that area, in the proximity of that area, and all the other technologies which are connected to that particular product or technology. A very good example is, look, a very simple example. If we have personal computers and we have digital photography. Now, without personal computers, digital photography, personal computing, and those platforms, digital photography like applications would not be possible and widespread. At the same time, without personal computer and computing, of course, the digital photography will not happen, but also without computing, without applications like digital photography, personal computers and computing will have no future. So this is called co-arising of technologies. And very important thing that we have learned even more so very forcefully during COVID-19 times is negotiating change, to be accepting of change, and to adopt and to make new opportunities out of these changes. There is no use, when just COVID had started, everybody used to ask. I heard so many people asking me, they're saying, hey, when would we get back to the old normal? I said, I don't know if there is like, do you want to return 100% back to the old normal? Or is there something, given the opportunity, you would like to see some changes? And this is a great opportunity. Every change is a great opportunity. Only if we recognize it. Okay. Now, you see, oftentimes when we talk about future, we say, look, what will happen in the future? There are very clear drivers and directions of technology and of the future. Those drivers and directions of technology come from our deep desires of the mind. What does mind want? It wants to be healthy, have quality of life, to be connected with equality, to learn and to apply our knowledge, to make decisions in complexity. For example, the rise of artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc., is in relation to that. To be entertained, for example, the rise of a whole lot of media, to have a better life, to be happy, to have fulfillment, to create and control its own world. For example, the rise of virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, which will become more and more important and much more widespread in the years to come. Even this movie Matrix now is quite old, but not that that you are hooked for supplying energy, but basically that all the minds will get actually hooked, and this is going to happen. And of course, that we all want happiness. Only error that we have made somewhere in last 100 years is to equate happiness with consumption. And of course, this would become very clear in your generation very, very quickly, that this equality is erroneous. In fact, this is the puzzle of climate change. It is a puzzle of sustainable development. And unless, you think about it, it's not going to happen. Since we are running out of time, well, here is kind of, very short, very brief, very summary of what we have talked about. But you can see it later. Let me come very quickly to careers, because this is the last part of my talk, so it may take another 5-10 minutes, after which we can have discussion. Okay, so we have gone through it. What are the new challenges and opportunities? It is a convergence of technologies, health, rise of intelligent machines, Industry 4.0, the flows and anchors of knowledge. Now, in chemical engineering, we worry about the flows of materials and energy. Now, there's a whole science and technology of flow of knowledge, which becomes of overarching significance. Environment, resources, climate, globalization. Now, you see, today's world, if you look at education and learning, it's already globalized, right? We are all talking to each other, sitting in different parts of the country, and we are talking to each other sitting in the different parts of the world. So very soon you would see that if you are not a good teacher, you go out of business no matter where you sit, because another person from this great university XYZ can equally instruct you. It's no longer necessary that that person must be located in Ahmedabad. So in other words, we must have the learning and the skill which is globally competitive. Okay, so when a whole lot of people talk about career, they say, look, what is it? What do you look in career? In a successful career, of course, you look for financial security, you look for psychological security. Part of it is related to social status and the prestige that career brings. Sometimes you choose it based on your interest and strengths. We'll come to look at it as to how you choose it. Of course, you have in that career, look for sense of achievements, you look for work-life balance, and you look for fulfillment. There is this Maslow's motivational pyramidal model. Okay, I now have time to go into it, but those of you who have interest, you look at the bottom of this pyramid are physiological needs, roti, kapda, and makan. There are safety needs, there are needs of belonging and love, and the needs of self-esteem. So these are all the needs which are called deficiency needs, which can be addressed by science and technology more and more. On the top of that pyramid are more transcendental needs, or the needs for the growth of a being. These are called cognitive needs, aesthetic needs, need for self-actualization, and transcendence. These are the needs which are not very easily addressed by technology. What kind of jobs and careers are there? Of course, for chemical engineers and allied subjects, you can have jobs in academia. There may be research and development and innovation or teaching and so on. Of course, industry jobs are very, very diverse. They may be in R&D, in developing products and processes and technologies, quality control, human resource management, sales and marketing, technical writing, business development, market research, intellectual property management, and there are very many more. There are, of course, jobs and careers in entrepreneurship, technology startups, and that's happening more and more. Science and technology management and administration, regulatory compliances, other words, the interface between society and the government, between industry and the government, and so on. In the government, in the NGOs and think tanks and what have you, whole lot of them. So there are some perspectives on careers. Your journey of career starts with education, skills, and then preparing the ground for a career, then looking at the sectors and opportunities and navigating the changes. Career, as I already pointed out, is not a string of jobs, and the preparation for a career starts with education. And education, we must remember, is the capacity to learn and to apply that learning. The education, unfortunately, most people think that education is basically the contents of education is what comes in the exams. Not at all. Actually, the education, 10% of that is education. I would say 90% of education is learning to learn. Other words, the next problem you would come across is not in the textbook. Okay, that is basically requires learning as to what the dimensions of that problem are, what kind of tools are required, and what kind of solutions are there, and then have okay skills which are required, and especially the soft skills which are most important. So let me look at this, preparing the ground. So, do you like match your discipline and college with your strength and interest and aspirations, and not the herd behavior? I've often seen, people saying, "Look, when I was doing counseling for JEE, IIT, whole lot of parents will come ask me a dumb question. They would say, Doctor Sahab, where is more scope? Is it in mechanical engineering? Is it in electrical, chemical, what?" And I was totally dumbstruck with this question, because I tried to, I knew the answer and I can explain it to them, saying, look, your child only needs one job. Now, what is the meaning of a scope? I mean, are you looking for a sector in which there are 10 lakh jobs versus another in which there is 1 lakh versus 10,000? All of that matters only for policy planners, right? It does not matter on individual level. What matters on individual level is how good you are in that discipline, right? So you only need one job. Remember, you don't need 10,000 jobs. You have to be good at what you are doing. And it's no use saying, where is everybody going? What are they doing? And so on. Okay. Anyhow, these are very serious topics, and I'll not do justice to them. This slide actually in very limited time, so I will pass it. Okay. We have already gone through some of this stuff. See, your model of learning so far has been, your model of learning and doing has been competition. So because it depends on the individual brilliance. So if you succeed is because you are good and you have outcompeted other people. But in the real world, it's not the competition and your IQ that matters, but is how good you are at cooperation and teamwork. That should be clear. So which is something, this is a skill that we have not been trained in. Ethics is very important, and connecting with the wider world with soft skills is indeed very important. Okay, let me skip that. Talking about the soft skills, I would say that about 80% of success in career is attributable to soft skills and people's skills, plus of course attitude to life and to everybody else. The rest 20% is from technical knowledge. Now, I am not undermining technical knowledge, not at all. All I'm saying is that's necessary but not sufficient. And this is a point that is not sufficiently emphasized. What are the soft skills? Communication, self-motivation. I've seen so many people getting depressed because they say, hey, nobody is telling me cheerful things, nobody is cheerleading me. Say, of course, this world is very cruel. Nobody is going to cheerlead you. If you cannot pull yourself up, if you cannot be positive all the time, if you cannot take failures and move on from there, then you are not going to have a good career, no matter what you do. Okay, and in this actually, self-motivation and a whole lot of these things, the soft skills, they also are impacted by the company that we keep. Basically, I keep telling people, look, my mantra is get rid of energy vampires. Now, energy vampires are these people who, instead of sucking blood, they suck energy out of you by their negativity, pessimism, and doomsday scenarios. If you hang around these people for 2 hours, the whole world actually would look totally dark. Okay, leadership qualities, taking responsibility, very important. You can't say, in fact, when you succeed in a teamwork, the credit for success goes to everybody. But if you fail, then the leader of the team has to take responsibility. Teamwork, negotiating and conflict resolution, flexibility, ability to work under pressure and time management, decisive actions, and problem solving are some of the soft skills. Okay, now when you go for looking for a job, starting a career, KYC is very important when you appear for an interview. KYC is know your customer. Okay, not prepare your CV according to that. Prepare everything according to their business and expectations. In the interviews, don't just be passive listening to questions and answering them. You are also free to ask questions about what they do, how they do it, and so on. What is would be your role in their company, and so on. The continuous upgrading of skills and knowledge is very important. um, okay, let me skip that. So essential skills that we need to develop is talking to people, networking, learning outside perspectives, connecting the dots, independent critical thinking, and leveraging serendipity is basically what we learn by chance. Okay, now one thing that I was going to point out before I conclude, which would be very, very shortly now. Um, you see, there are a couple of things about interviews. You see, nobody knows everything. Okay, your interviewer may know many more things than you do. I'll tell you from my experience. So the one and only job that I appeared for after BTech, and I got that job, they asked me about something about pumps of a very special kind, which I had forgotten everything. So I said, look, I don't remember this, but I will go home, I will learn everything about it, and I'll come back and tell you tomorrow. But at the same time, while I don't at this moment recall pumps very well, I know heat exchangers very well. So you want to ask me any questions about heat exchangers, which are equally important, I can respond to you right away. So basically, you transmit the fact that, look, you have the capacity to learn, and this is how actually all problems get solved. And you must have the confidence and convey that confidence that you are capable of learning and coming back and interacting with them again, right? So these are the kind of stuff that is useful in terms of getting a job, in terms of having a positive experience in the interviews. Okay. um, so there we go. This is my last slide. I'm sorry that we're taken a little longer than I had hoped to, but we have covered a very very, very wide spectrum, very wide ground. And I hope that we have some keywords and some thoughts to think about at the end of it. So let me conclude here. Thank you very much for all of you who are still there with us, for being here with us. It's been a fantastic journey for me too, because when I talk, then I also learn. So thanks again. If there are any discussion, questions, anything that you would like to put forward, I'm more than happy to stay much longer with you and discuss it with you. As they say in the Star Trek, live long and prosper. I conclude here. Is there anybody still there?
Yes, sir. There are quite a few people here.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so there we go. So let's get on with your questions, any other observations or discussion, if you have them.
Good evening, sir. Sir, I'm Trisha. I had a question, sir.
By the way, is my camera on? Can you see me?
Yes, it's on now.
Yes.
So, sir, we have a question from Trisha.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, like in this online mode, we don't have access to the laboratory equipment and stuff. So like if I suppose I want to go for masters in nanotechnology, so then how do I build my CV in terms of research in nanotechnology? Because we don't have access to those equipments right now, sir.
Yeah. So you want to do what, PhD?
So for
What
now,
do you want to do,
masters.
PhD?
Yes, so maybe.
Yeah, so no, that is true. This is a very general issue that, of course, you did not have access to lab. You did not have access to experiments. And in fact, you didn't have access to a whole lot of social interactions, which are of physical nature. So all of us have missed something in that process. No doubt about it. Okay, why is it that I cannot see none of you? I think I must have minimized it
So you'll
somewhere.
have to move to Zoom and disable screen sharing.
I disable screen sharing. Okay.
Stop screen sharing. That would be the option available.
Oh, no. It's because I had, I had minimized that bar. I can see you now, Ananya, Aparna. Okay. Um, Very good. So no, I think that this is it's a question only not for me. This is true that we have not had actually opportunity for lab work. Okay, and I'm sure that in the future to come, whole lot of lab would be virtual labs. There would be demonstration labs. There would be virtual immersive labs, if you would. But that future is still going to take another. I think the beginning of that is going to happen in about 2-3 years from now. Okay, so a whole lot of aspects of our lives will become virtual, right? If you think about it, the way we are interacting right now is not, this technology is not greatly advanced compared to Skype. It's two-dimensional technology, flat screen. It's not an immersive experience and so on. But all of that is going to happen. Okay. Unfortunately, while technology makes a good slave, it doesn't always make a good master. Unfortunately, also that technology would take over more and more of our cognitive, experiential aspects of life. And not only it will happen, but we will let it happen, willingly. We will surrender more and more of our own decision making to machines. But that anyway, there's some shadows and light there. Now your question, so you see, you are not at any disadvantage compared to your competitors or other people who also have nothing to show in their CV on that count, right? So this is true, unfortunately, unfortunate but true, but no reason to get disheartened. Your CV would be whatever it is, the exams that you have taken, the marks that you have obtained, and so on. It is always important to have the capacity to learn. If you have missed 1 year of certain experience, it's not the end of life. Even if you have missed 10 years of your some kind of experience, it's not the end of life. This is only the beginning of life. In fact, only yesterday I was talking to an IIT graduate who is 70 years old. Other words, he was 10 years senior to me. He now is enrolling for PhD. Okay, so it's never late to think about any of these aspects and stop growing and stop learning. In fact, I cannot sleep on days when I have not learned something new on that day. I think, I mean, sometimes other people also think that I know a lot, but there's always something new, at least two new things one must learn every day, which you say, look, I didn't know before, but today I can sleep easy because I know, that's something new, some new perspective, some new debate on some new idea, right? Some new something, right? This is what keeps the excitement of life in tech. This is what basically makes us going, right? So don't be disheartened. Just get, at the same time, okay, you would have spent some time in your lab, but just because you spend some time in the lab doesn't mean that you have learned something new. Yeah, when I was an undergraduate in one of the IITs, I used to bunk a lot of classes, and I was reading on my own some literature that interested me more. I took responsibility for it. If I get a bad grade in that course, I'm not going to blame the instructor. Okay, I'm not going to blame anybody. I'm just going to say, look, this is what I wanted and this is what I got. There is a price for everything. Okay, so just going to a lab in itself is not a very meaningful proposition. It is what you get out of that lab is the most important thing. Of course, in the normal times, we go to lab because it is mandatory. It is to get a good grade and everything, right? But that is not a sufficient reason actually to go to lab, to my mind, or to do anything for that matter, right? So now I think it's perfectly okay if you made use of that time that you could not go to lab, and actually you could, your learning is your own. Look, sometimes people complain. No, thinking about lost opportunities. I'll give you another example. Whole lot of us complain that I did not learn anything in that course. because I had a bad teacher. To my mind, the conclusion should be opposite, because to my mind, bad teachers are good teachers, because they tell us the urgency and importance of self-learning, which is all the learning there is. Okay, there's all illusion that somebody will teach me something. Look, I got good grades and everything in my BTech, but when I started teaching, I had forgotten everything. Okay, so only way that you can actually apply knowledge and indeed can teach anybody is if you have learned it yourself. In other words, is the capacity to learn, which is most important, not the content. I had forgotten Fourier's law. I have forgotten everything. I had drifted in different directions. I was doing biomedical engineering. I was doing surgery on rabbits. Who cares about Fourier's law, right? So therefore, I didn't care, and I didn't think it was important, right? But when I have to teach heat transfer, it's no big deal. It'll all come back to you, right? And so you can learn all of this and apply. Okay, so most important thing is the capacity to learn the relevant things and to be able to apply them, okay, and to translate them into opportunities. And so if you are able to do that, no matter whether you went to a lab or not, it doesn't really matter. So you must have that confidence. The only thing that matters is if we have wasted all that time, sleeping and being depressed and worrying about what the world brings to me, right? Making a career choice and then regretting it later. All of that has no meaning. You see, there's another question that people often say, hey, am I making a right choice? Is it the right choice for me? Of course, you make, no matter what choice you make is the right choice. Okay, after you have done all your due diligence, you have thought about it, you have, you know who you are, you know what that choice is. Okay, having done all that, not under peer pressure, having done that, you are the only one responsible for that choice. And so every choice is the right choice. And you cannot go back in the past because life is not a controlled experiment. So you cannot revisit your past and say, if I made a different, if I made a different choice, would my life be better? You can never answer that question. The probability of right answer to that question is zero. Okay. I know very successful people who are very depressed. I know very successful people who commit suicide. I know, on the other hand, some people you think are not successful, but they are good, right? In any case, there is no correlation in different aspects of life. And therefore, the choice that you make with the full knowledge of making that choice is the only and only right choice there is. And you cannot blame anybody else for that.
So would you suggest any particular courses in nanotechnology that we could take up in an online mode that will help us
Yeah, but I
get
don't know
better
what courses
knowledge?
are offered in your college.
Sir, apart from college, any other online courses that are available
You
for
can
the
always, of course, you can, there are a whole lot of online courses. There are these MIT openware courses and NPTEL closer home. So I'm sure that there are this stuff which is there. See, whole point is, you see, learning everything. Okay, first of all, you cannot learn everything in depth, and learning everything is a waste of time. So therefore, one must choose to say, look, what is it you have interest in? Because the world out there is infinite, but each one of us is finite. Okay, so while there is no end to how much courses you can do, at the end of it all lies the same question, saying, why am I doing this? What is it that I will get? Hope, what is my objective in doing this? And so on, right? So unless we have good answers to these questions, of course, I know the obvious objective and the obvious motivation for it, which is to say, look, it will look good on my CV, which is perfectly fine. I mean, okay, that's a good objective. Okay, you want to get your first job and so on. But you see, all these things are now very critical for getting a job and so on. It is all, is really your 10-minute performance out there, no matter how much you know or don't know. Okay. So a whole lot of this is so dependent on what we call luck. While there is no such thing as luck, I agree. But a whole lot of that, the things coming together or not coming together, all of that matters. So, what nanotechnology course you should do? There would be hundreds of nanotechnology courses available. Now, do you want to do something related to drug delivery? You want to do something related to electronics or communication, or is something related to more general aspects, the fundamentals, if you would, because fundamentals in nanotechnology are very interdisciplinary. So it's not like just one thing. For example, from my perspective, nanotechnology that I taught was from the perspective of what you call colloids and surface science. So colloids were these particles which are 1 micron or less. Now you get down to below 100 nanometers, then it becomes nanotechnology. So if you were to look at, for example, you're coming from that perspective. So it all depends on, you may come from polymer, perspective of polymer materials. You may be working on sensors, or you may look at nanomaterials, which are for environmental remediation, or you look at nanomaterials for health applications. And you may look at nanomaterials for energy storage, right? For example, batteries and the next generation batteries, supercapacitors, and so on. Again, you may be looking at making nanomaterials, or you may be looking at making a device, which is a different thing than making nanomaterials. Or you may be working in nanomechanics, which means understanding of how this all happens, right? So there is, nanotechnology, I'm saying, is not one thing, but there are also a lot of so-called introductory nanotechnology courses, which is a little bit of everything thrown in there, right? So you can search for those courses, and then whatever appeals to you, you can take that. Now, the reason I cannot tell you a specific course is because I have not done any course in nanotechnology. I've only taught. So I have no idea about what others teach. I don't need to know. Okay. It's the same reason I am not found on LinkedIn. Often people say, "Sir, can I connect on LinkedIn?" I say, "Yeah, you can, yeah, but I visit there once in 6 months because I already have a job. I'm not looking for networking. I'm looking for friendship." So what I'm saying is nothing wrong with LinkedIn. What I'm saying is, what is your purpose? Okay, you must understand. So it's like this. Why I'm not, let's say, also very active on Twitter, because Twitter is a one-way communication, right? So I just tweet, I say my thing, and I go. I don't care about what others get out of it or not, right? LinkedIn is more like, okay, professional networking, contacts and stuff. I like Facebook. The reason I like Facebook is you have friends there, you have discussion. It's not one-way street. And I have about 12,000 friends, more I think, on Facebook, but even half of them I even know personally. Okay, so this is a human touch, so to say. Now I'm not saying that this is the right medium for everybody. What I'm trying to illustrate is that you must match your expectations and your personality with your course, with your platform, with your college, with your discipline. With There is no single right choice in these matters, right? It is a combination of who you are, what you want, and then look for the right platform. Okay, that is right for you. Okay, it's no use comparing. Some people tell me, "Oh, this what is that? Another platform?" No, you put a lot of picture. Instagram. So people tell me, "Hey, but on Instagram you get more likes, than on the Facebook." Um, so see, so which may be true. So what it means is, no, look, if your expectation is to get more likes, then obviously you should choose that medium where you get more likes. There's nothing wrong with it, right? Only thing is, have clarity of your vision and your thought about what you want from life, and I go for it. Then you match that with you, okay? Because the options are infinite in this world. Life is like a big procession passing through a narrow street. So it's often get jammed. Now, quickest way is not forget you short circuit, you go around and pass the procession. Like happens in Bharat, no? And you're going somewhere and you are stuck. Okay, don't worry about Bharat that no tamashas will keep going. I mean, you find your way and go around and exit. I'm sorry, I have not answered the question that she asked. I'm totally mindful of that. Okay, but I answer has no meaning. Okay, it's only the capacity to ask question and to probe that question and get the answer for it. It's the process of getting answer which is important, not the answer. Because I may tell you, do this course. What is the meaning of that? This because I like that course. It doesn't really mean that it's a good course, right? So it looks like everybody got so bored and they all left, huh? Well, my principle is that if I'm in a class or talking like on this platform, I'm the last person to leave. So when everybody says they have had enough and they need to leave now, I say okay. When everybody leaves, then I shut down and I leave. But I am very happy to stay here and interact as long as there are any other questions.
Hello, sir. Am I
Yeah.
audible?
Yes,
Sir,
it's
this
very
is
very
Manish.
audible.
Sir, this is Manish Kumar, and I'm joining this Zoom meeting from Meerut City.
Uh-huh.
Sir, I've done my that PhD from IIT Guwahati
Uh-huh.
in polymer nanocomposite, and before that, I did my masters. Basically, I'm not a chemical engineering. I did my BSc and then MSc in polymer science,
Mm.
and I did my that MTech also in the polymer plastic engineering from CPET Lucknow. Sir, now the thing is that after finishing my PhD, I'm applying in different in academia and in industries also, but I'm not getting the proper response. I don't know where I'm getting stuck, but from the publication point of view and the courses which I have done is totally relevant with the polymer only. So I'm facing a much problem right now. Do you suggest me how to overcome this problem?
Yeah, I mean, this is, you see that this is not a personal problem. This, in a sense, is a problem for everyone who is looking, um, right? And so, of course, that the general solution is to keep looking, but keep looking with a greater resolve, greater energy, and seeing what are the deficit areas in which perhaps some improvement is needed in order to. So you said looking for a job in academia.
Sir, yes, sir.
Why only academia? Why not you start up?
So that I'm trying in industry also, particularly in the R&D field, like in the teamwork. But
Yes, you see, unfortunately, in the Indian industry, as opposed to what we call technologically developed countries, R&D in Indian industry is not that strong. So I can totally understand that it's hard to find, R&D job in industry. Also, you see, globally, about not more than 10% PhDs globally find job in academia. Okay, so you must keep in mind, unfortunately, our training of PhD is only for academia. So there is a big gap between our expectations of PhD, our training that goes with our PhD students, and the number of jobs which are available in academia, right? So for every job, let's say if you were to look at in IITs, for every teaching job, there may be hundreds of applicants. So it becomes a matter of luck, it becomes a matter of somewhat chance, etc. Also, whether you are selected there or not. It is indeed very competitive. People don't realize that to become a professor is more competitive than to get a job in some industry, um, which may even pay you much more, more relaxed. People think, oh, professor's job is easy and so on. Okay. Um, Not really, but anyhow, it's a question of how your training and interest have been. So it is obvious that the only thing that somebody can advise you is that, okay, keep at all the possibilities, both industry and academia and R&D labs like CSIR and so on. There are lots of government, R&D labs, but also perhaps, you may wish to look at the opportunities in the startup sector. Let me give you an example. Every time I try to convince one of my PhD students to have a startup, they're very reluctant, right? They said, oh no, I just want a regular income. I'm from middle class. I need security in life. And, somehow they have seen a world which is, they because, you do PhD, you've gone through B.Tech, M.Tech, PhD, whatever, right? We have seen only one kind of world that we are comfortable with. We cannot take, nobody taught us to take risk. Nobody told us that failure is an option in life, right? Has anybody told you, has anybody appreciated you failing anywhere, right?
Never.
Never, because this is, not only that, most parents are saying, hey, you useless fellow, you got 95% in high school. Look, your neighbor got 99%. And sometimes there are people are getting 102%. Now, I don't know what kind of joke it is. But anyway, it is all a joke. You see, all of this percentage has no meaning at all, right? But we have seen only that world, right? We have seen that world where only certain type of achievements are appreciated, right? But that does not prepare us for the real world. A generalization of your question actually is that do we have the ambition, the skill, the training, and the ambition and aspiration to look for all kind of jobs, not only one kind of job. In fact, once I had a meeting, you know these Ramanujan fellows, you're aware of them?
Yeah, sir. I know that there is one fellowship.
INSA Inspire fellows,
Yeah.
all of them, they're after PhD. So, I had a meeting with about 200 of them, and I asked them, how many of you are preparing for a career outside of academia? Maybe 2 or 3 hands went up. But I guarantee you, all those 200 people who were there at that time, not all of them will find a job in academia. And maybe they'll not find a satisfying job in academia. Maybe their view of life is all R&D. But, it doesn't happen in all the colleges. Then they are going to start feeling depressed and so on, right? So question is, have we matched our expectations with that of the world? I'm not discouraging you at all. Of course, you have to keep at searching even more strongly where you are searching, right? But I'm saying, can you also search for some things outside of it? Now, I was telling you the story. So whenever I told PhD, now with some PhD students, I was so sure that they will succeed in startups when they themselves are not sure about it, because we have not, transmitted those skills, right? But whenever they did, they succeeded beyond their wildest imagination. And I can tell you, what is it that we lack? In after our education, what is it that we lack? Can somebody tell me? Maybe Ananya knows, or Aparna knows, or somebody here knows. What is it that we are lacking after, doing your college, you think?
Experience.
No, you have experience of college. The experience will only be what experience you have. What we lack actually is confidence. That you see, you don't lack IQ. You don't lack the cracking toughest exams. We have been cracking them all our lives, right? But after the end of it all, even a 10-pointer, 9-pointer, whatever it is, 4-pointer out of 4, lacks confidence that they actually have a knowledge which they can monetize. Okay, because we always thought of knowledge as something which is good only for cracking exams and getting degree. From the beginning, our idea of education is only that. We never thought that this education or getting a job or my first job, that's about it. And that job is based on that piece of paper and the grades and stuff, right? We never thought that education has a different meaning. The education meaning is the capacity to learn, right? Neither our teachers, me included, nor anybody else said that the meaning of education is not that, right? So therefore, now we suddenly find ourselves in a world in which all this education has not prepared us for the what we call the real world, which means that, look, I have all this knowledge. I am much better than the guy walking in the street. If he can be so successful, I can be more successful. I got IQ, I got intelligence, I got all this training, I got other thing that we somewhat little bit lack is not IQ. I said confidence. There's something, confidence. I don't mean, only people talking big things and stuff. I mean the real inner confidence that, look, not only I can do it, but I will do it. And even if I'm not totally successful, it's not going to stop me. Okay, so maybe I will lose 2 years. Who cares, right? Life is long. Okay, this is through with some combination of success and failure, which will not happen until we take risk. Okay, so actually success teaches nothing to nobody. Okay, it's only little bit lack of success, which is a good teacher. By the way, a lot of people say that, failure is not forever. Failure is not forever. That's only half the truth. Success is not forever either. So if we have understood that both success and failure are equally transient in life, that they are not forever. Not only failure, of course, from failure you learn, but also from success you learn. Okay, not to go very quickly back into the ditch of failure. Okay, so there's no reason to be happy or depressed when with success or otherwise. So please keep at it. I'm generalizing your question, and that's why I'm touching upon these aspects. Other thing that we are a little bit weak in after college is not IQ, but EQ, which is the emotional quotient. And this is all related to, our risk taking, our confidence, our, to deal with adversity and come out of it on top, right? So all that, the EQ is a little bit weak because again, we have not, put any emphasis on that particular skill. Right? Nobody said, look, to crack some competitive exam, you need EQ, right? And equally well, also empathy quotient. So we need emotional quotient and empathy quotient equally, in addition to IQ, which is part of our soft skills, which is about teamwork. I mean, if you don't have empathy quotient, you cannot be a good team worker at all. And whatever happens, real life success is mostly due to teamwork and not because of individual brilliance. That's good for cracking exams. So, sorry, what was your name again?
Sir, my name is Manish Kumar, sir.
Manish Kumar.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and what is your how young are you?
Sir, right now I've crossed 35 years, sir.
Okay, so you see clearly age is not on your side.
Sir.
Okay, we see I'm not being rude or cruel or anything, right?
Sir.
I'm only stating the fact that actually in academia at the entry level, most of them have some age limit, right? So therefore, of course, you should read. I think it is what, 35, 37, something like that.
Yes, sir. In most of the
what?
In most of the cases, it is 35 years.
Yeah, of course, you should also apply to a lot of private colleges, because see, the government deadlines and dates, everything is taken very seriously. Okay, it's like a Lakshman Rekha you cannot cross, or otherwise people will go to court, right?
Okay.
So that is why it's very important that you also connect with the private sector, both in education and in industry. There are lots of good private universities right now here. I was so impressed with, Ahmedabad University, which is organizing this, right? Many good universities are out there where you can find fulfillment in your career. And sometimes, people don't consider colleges. They only want to, be in only one IIT or some central university or something. You should not narrow down your choices.
Okay.
And, I wish you all the very best.
Thank you, sir.
I wish I had a job, in my pocket. I would offer it to you right away. But the solution to this problem, it is not a personal problem.
Yeah,
I mean, you understand, but it's always so important to keep your spirits high, no matter, it's much easier said than done. I totally understand that. I'm not preaching anything which is not possible. Okay. So my, somebody is in difficulty, and we say, look, no. I mean, I'm not, I understand that totally, right? But what is the option? Okay, you look at what the option is. There is no other option but to be positive, to bring in ever greater energy in solving your problem, and keep working at it wherever, apply every possible way, and keep contacting them, and so on. Have a network, ask people where the jobs are, and so on.
sir. Sir, is that possible that I can meet you personally in future, so I can show you my CV and document?
Yeah, like I said, future is uncertain.
Sir.
But I mean, in principle, yes, um, I totally, I mean, love meeting people. No problem with that if I have time. And so when the virus settles and everything, we may consider that.
Thank
We
you,
can
sir.
certainly meet, but what is personal meeting? We can also talk on telephone, which is same as personal meeting.
Yeah, sir.
I
Sure.
encourage people to, not like physically, they don't have to be there, because, you have to travel and more hassle. So what is actually called physical meeting? The meaning of physicality is, when I see you, let's say what is called three-dimensionally, that is also an image. It is the same as seeing you on the screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay. As long as we can have the same conversation, and feel free, we can have that conversation sometime. Thank you, Manish.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, sir. This is Priya.
Oh, you're Priya, or you're One Plus Nord?
Yes, sir. Sorry, I forgot to get my name.
I was contemplating to get a 1+9 myself, and so I know One
Yes.
Plus Nord.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for the wonderful talk. And it's always really good to hear you. I mean, I'm following you for like last 5 to 6 years on Facebook, and it's always good to hear you. I mean, you're so motivational and really a inspirational model for all of us. So, sir,
What is your name? Is that again?
Sir, Priya Vashisht.
Priya. Oh, I know
Yeah.
Priya Vashisht. Like I said, I know all my Facebook friends.
Yes.
Very good to see you.
Yes, sir. It's good to, talk to you. I always wanted to, and I think, okay, let's me talk to you today. So I don't have any other question. I just want to add on, or maybe motivate Manish. So Manish, I'm an Inspire faculty at IIT Delhi. Right now, I'm in London, working at KCL, King's College London. So, even after getting this position, DST Inspire faculty at IIT Delhi, I'm teaching a course entrepreneurship from last 3 years at IIT Delhi. But still, I'm not sure I'll get a position there, right? In IIT Delhi or other institute. So there's no way, but this never let me down. Okay. If you want to do something, if you are really passionate about this, love something, you will find a way. It's just that whether you want to find a way or not. So
sure. Thank you. Thanks a lot for the motivation.
Yeah. So it's just that what you love, what you like to enjoy. So maybe a private college, maybe a startup, maybe working with someone else, you'll find a way. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, in fact, now one of the guys who's doing a PhD with me, after about 15 years, he lost his job. He also lost interest. So he became, so he was a PhD in chemical engineering. He was working in a good company in the US, in the Bay Area. Then he found suddenly opportunity to be a financial advisor. A lot of his friends had a lot of money, so he can make money off them, right? By telling them how to invest it. Now
Yeah.
that would not be my choice of a career, but I'm saying, look, the world is very diverse, is very wide spectrum. So, don't close any avenues. As Priya said, also, not everybody finds a job of their liking and what you may call the ideal fit and so on. It is not that. I think mostly is because of our conditioning that we are looking for one particular place or a particular kind of job. You can make a good life, fulfilling life, and enriched life. No, actually, to come to think of it, no matter what you do in life, okay, some people get lucky that you get exactly what you had planned for in life. Um, in high school, I had decided I wanted to be a professor, and then I decided once I went to IIT, I decided I wanted to be a professor there, and somehow or other worked out. Okay, but it didn't work out. At some point, I was thinking I'll drop out of PhD. Didn't have great attachment actually with PhD, or for that matter, anything. I said, nice, we'll do something, right? Okay. So yeah, is life is complex, and you don't never have a total control over it. And sometimes I also am reluctant to tell people that they should do what they love, and they should know who they are, and then choose. But oftentimes, we will saying, look, I don't know who I am, right? And so if you don't know that or what you really love, then you have to go by rankings. Okay, so a whole lot of people, they are choosing for PhD, for masters. They come and ask me, so where should I go? I say, you should do your research. I mean, look at all the professors, look at what they are doing, and then decide what you love. Okay, but most people don't want to actually do that. What they want to do is they will pull out some ranking list from somewhere, and they'll say, this one is ranked higher, one, two places higher than that, and they would be, I mean, to my mind, that's a sheer stupidity. I mean, the heights of stupidity. But okay, I mean, people who don't think for themselves, they let others think for them and decide for them, right?
Sure.
I'll give you an example from my own experience. So after doing masters at Penn State, I had fellowship offers from top 3 places in the top 5 places according to rankings. We all know what these places are, right? But I said, I'm not going to any of these places. I am going to work for a particular person where the university is ranked maybe in top 50, not even in top 20. And I did that. And everybody told me that I was stupid to do that. I mean, why would you leave MIT and go somewhere else, right? So I said, no, I'm sure about what I'm doing. I'm confident that this is the area and this is the person I want to work with. Okay. And I've never regretted that decision. Okay. On the other hand, if you don't know what is it that who you are, what you want to do, go by ranking. You cannot go wrong. Right?
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, right. By somebody else's life that you're living. Manish, I see you there.
Yes, sir. Sir, actually, I am your in your Facebook list.
Yeah,
This
I was
last
going
like
to say that.
5 years.
Now looking at your face, I remember.
Yeah. Sir. So, but this is my first
Because
interaction
problem
with
is
you.
Manish, there are so many Manish,
Yeah, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very popular
Common name.
name in your generation.
Yeah.
So, but face is unique, yes.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Keep at it, my friend.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir.
So Ananya, what's happening? You are mute.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there are any other questions as of now, but I mean your presence here, it's like really valued because we had like an honest conversation of sorts, and it was really nice. And there's also this very unique perspective that you brought in today. And I mean, a lot of professors, they don't talk about all of this, but today, listening to you talk about it, it was really nice.
Yeah. That's why when you told me that, you give a lecture on nanotechnology, I was so reluctant to do it because 1 hour lecture on nanotech is neither here nor there. Right? Because, okay. It's something you can read, on your own by Google. Okay, by doing it. Then these are the things we do not discuss in classrooms, which are the most important things in real life. Right? Like I told you, I had forgotten everything by going to all these classes. What good were they? Right?
That is true.
Yes.
But I mean, I had a lot of fun, and I'm guessing everybody who joined here had a lot of fun. And
Hello. Thank you very much. You have a good dinner and good evening and so on. I hope there's some exciting news today. You can watch that.
We hope so.
How many people are okay? You can stop recording.